DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined now by David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. David, good morning.
Good morning, David James. Oh, my gosh. Another Friday, another week complete, another brilliant morning with two of the greatest of all time. Gosh, it feels so good. And Patrick and Ann, I owe you a text message because yours was awesome. I appreciate it immensely. Thank you very much. Of no interest, but I sincerely appreciate the sentiment.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
David James, you didn't text me this week. You didn't even stop by to say hi at the broadcast booth. We've been home for like a 13-day homestand, and I haven't seen you once.
I came by the broadcast booth and talked at length with Bowler and Thurl, and you were not on the premises. I do not know where you were. But I looked, and I walked right by, and you weren't there. Booner wasn't there, but I ran into Booner in another place in the arena just by accident and chatted him up.
All right. Well, then there was the love, and I missed it.
Yep.
You're still the greatest of all time. Makes me feel good.
I'm curious what you think. There's been, obviously some big trades. Jimmy Butler threw quite the fit in Miami, but ended up in Golden State. And the East Coast woke up to the news that Luka Doncic had been traded while they were sleeping. And now the Lakers and Warriors are both winning at a pretty good clip and climbing in the standings. Do you take either one or both of them as serious contenders to win it all, or they've improved their place in the pecking order, but ultimately they're going to go home disappointed before it gets to the big show?
I'll take one of the two as a title contender.
Explain.
Which one do you think I will take as a title contender?
The Lakers, because you'll love Luka Doncic. Right.
I just think Luka's top 5 player in the world. Steph might be a top 5 player in the world still. I'm not totally certain of that. And I hope he is because I love Steph. But he was last night, certainly. But I'm not sure he's a top 5 player in the world. And I just think that team doesn't quite have enough. The Lakers are obviously lacking, but Jackson Hayes is playing fairly well inside. And I just, frankly, LeBron's been incredible in the midst of all of this. And Luka's great. And they haven't really figured out how to play together yet, and at some point they will, and Luka will figure this out, and LeBron will figure out how to play off the ball a little bit, and I wouldn't want to have to knock them out 4 out of 7. I wouldn't want to knock Steph out 4 out of 7 either, so if nothing else, I would say that they're both going to be really, really difficult playoff outs, but I think they're both I think there's 3 title contenders in the West, and I think the Lakers are one of the 3.
We've talked about how stats sometimes can be empty for losing teams, but I'm wondering, in regard to Kessler, the stats that he's putting up, in my mind, they would be transferable on a winning team because nobody wants their shot blocked and everybody wants a rebound and all that type of stuff. So I'm thinking that they're legit when the team gets better, that he can do what he's doing. What do you think about that?
It's a great question because I am of the same school as you are, that every game has 90 points minimum and 45 rebounds minimum. And so if you're just on the floor for long enough, you'll do it. There is also a school of thought, Jared Dubin has written about this, who's got a Substack account, that there is also only so many players can go have 22 points and 17 rebounds in a game. Like, it just doesn't matter how much you're on the floor. Like, certain guys can't do that. Like, if you look at some of our younger players, like, you could put Cody Williams on the floor right now for kind of as long as you want, and he wouldn't be able to do, there's a limit to what he can do, right? Like, he's just not good enough. He's not strong enough. He's not physically at that point in his career. He'll hopefully get there, but right now he's not. So I go a little bit both ways on this. I do feel like just Walker's overall performance. So, rim, he's defending the second most amount of shots in the NBA. He's, I think, 4th best at affecting the shot. Like, everyone's trying to make their shot, right? To backing up your point. So yes, I do feel like Walker more so than some others, and maybe at that position more so than some others, the statistics that you get even in a losing team, and even just on kind of, we're not at that stage yet, but there is a point of the season where I really start to not follow the stats, that what we're seeing is pretty legitimate. So I'm with you. I think you have to be a little careful, but I'm generally with you.
Now, exact same question. Take out the name Walker Kessler, put in the name Isaiah Collier. looking at assists, looking at his turnovers, looking at his shooting percentage. And maybe we should look at the other end of the floor defensively as well, but offense is so much more fun. Go ahead, assess.
So I think you have to be a little careful just in, like, if you get 27 minutes a night on the floor, what do you just naturally get, right? Like, I call it the Jeff Teague factor. Like, I'm not sure that, like, Jeff Teague was ever that good. But in Atlanta, he played, like, 30 minutes a night all the time, and he averaged, like, 17 points and 6 assists, 7 assists a game. And sometimes I think NBA point guards just have the ball in their hands enough that that's what they do. The way the game is now, there's 100 possessions, it's open floor, things like that. So that's where I get a little bit more tentative on some of these. But I would say in Collier's case, you know, when you're leading the NBA in assists, he's not, but he's like 4th in the league in assists in the month of February. Okay, well, you're in pretty elite category right there. You're doing something differently than everybody else. When you're, you know, I think the Jazz TV crew had an interesting stat, like on rookies who've averaged this many assists in a month. Like, it's not very many people. You know, and like, if you look at right now, the guys who have as many assists as he does in a game, I think it's Cade Cunningham, Trae Young, and Nikola Jokic. It's a pretty good category. So I do think that he's doing something differently than the rest of the league while having those minutes. And so in that sense, he has really, really good vision and creates. Now, at the same time, he's not a very good shooter. So his first option is always to pass. And, you know, as he develops these other skills, I would suspect that his assist numbers go down a little bit because he becomes a better shooter and a better scorer in those opportunities.
I look at Keontae George and Sexton as sort of duplicate, and they both have value in the league, and I think Sexton right now would have more value. But if they decide to go in one direction or the other, what is their worth on the open market, each player?
Colin Sexton and who?
George.
So I thought you said. I just thought you were going to say, when most people are comping Colin Sexton to a similar player that's the exact same, I hear Jordan Clarkson. So that's kind of what I was thinking you were going to say. So anyway.
Well, I'm looking down the line, not right now.
Colin's one of the best
will be on the team down the line.
Colin's one of the best, just pure bucket getting, off ball or on just drive to the basket, beat your man, get a basket guys in the league. They're just, his value is that in the league where sometimes it just gets hard to score, he can do it every time. Not every time, but he can go get you a bucket, right? Like if you're having an offensive drought and you have Colin Sexton on your roster, you can go in there and score. And Colin can do that. And that's actually really special. There just aren't that many guys in the NBA that can do that. I don't know yet that Keontae has figured out what his skill is. I do think the most exciting thing going on with Keontae is that his shooting percentage when he plays with Isaiah Collier's effective field goal percentage is about 6 or 7 percentage points better than when he plays without him. And so that tells me that he is just a lot more natural off ball. Doug Christie was really interesting talking about this the other day, what Malik Monk is going through, because Monk's playing point guard for Sacramento, and he's now shooting 38% from the field and 29% from three. And he's like, a scorer hits a bucket, they don't want the ball coming back next time in their hands to start. They want to like start off ball, get a pick, be moving, catch the ball, now be in a rhythm. But like when you suddenly bring the ball to the floor, there's 10 eyes on you immediately. And there's very few players in the league, probably at this point, Cade Cunningham, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, maybe Trae Young, like who can handle having 10 eyes on them to start a possession every single time. And so a real scorer, Steph Curry does it some of them, but he actually, more often than not is going to come off the ball, get it in a rhythm. And you can see that is how Keontae works much better. And so I think we're just learning right now of what Keontae can do off the ball. I think all the time he spent the last 18 months on the ball will be really, really valuable to him, because still a huge amount of that off the ball is, we bring it up, swing it to the side, something doesn't develop, we go second side to Key, Walker comes and sets a pick, and now you're playing that same pick and roll that you played with 10 eyes on you, but not as many, and you have the defense in rotation, so much easier, and if you're doing it off the wing, it's one read instead of two if you're doing it off the top. So I think it's just much easier, and he'll benefit off that. The other thing is I've done a bunch of research on pick and roll. in the collegiate game, in the NBA game, it takes about 5,000 pick and rolls before you kind of hit your peak of where you need to be. And so it's 3 or 4 years of 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 pick and rolls every year. And so he still needs to be getting a lot of these pick and roll actions to be able to develop his pick and roll understanding. It takes a long time. It's hard.
There's a thing in the NBA, and we're seeing it with Walker Kessler. You don't really know what you have until you see a player in the league for 3 years. And next year will be Keontae George's third year. Given everything you just said, do the Jazz need to go out and acquire a veteran point guard, not necessarily a starter, maybe a backup, but somebody so he doesn't have to play point guard minutes? There's other options on the roster, and they can see him off the ball over the course of a season. And if he has a lot of success, and if the shooting percentages go way up, and they've ticked up just a little bit, I mean, from 33 to 34% in the three-point shooting, but if they go up, the league's going to adjust. You've talked to us millions of times about how quickly the league adjusts, and then to see how he adjusts, don't they need a full season info to really know what they have?
So your assumption here is your starting point guard next year is Isaiah Collier.
He's one of the two. Isaiah Collier's one of the two. Bring in another one so Keontae George can be off the ball the entire season. And now here I'm assuming that there aren't, 2 7-player trades that totally turn the roster upside down this summer, which may well happen. Who knows?
Right.
But if they bring the group back intact, have all of his minutes off the ball so you can see what you have in case he does take a huge step forward.
Yeah, I would we don't really have a second point guard on the roster anymore after the Patty Mills trade.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Patty Mills, Patty was awesome, but he's also, 40. So I would agree, I was going to say Corey Joseph, but I then realized none of the listeners know who Corey Joseph is. Some do, but Don Crotty, Howard Isley, 14-minute a night filler. Yes, yeah. I think that'd be great. Like in roster construction and player development construction, I think that would be great if they're able to do that next year.
Is management committed to get a top 3 pick this year, or at least finish in the bottom 3?
What are you seeing?
I saw an 18-0 run with 2 rookies on the court, 2 second-year guys, and Johnny Juzang. I saw 3 turnovers by one guy, George, and 3 missed threes by another, Juzang. I didn't see any substitutions, and now I've got other games in my brain, but I don't think I remember a timeout either.
I don't know if I buy that. I'll quibble on that one a little bit. I don't think Will's coaching the game. I think Will is willing to let players. Here's what I mean by that. There's almost an implication to what you said there that Will's coaching a game recklessly, or
no, I don't think Will coaches recklessly. 100%. I do not think Will coaches recklessly. I think Will has a great attention to detail. I think he picks his words with the media very carefully and precisely to give exact answers to exact questions. And from what I've been told from people who've worked with him, that's how he moves through life, which is how you would want your NBA head coach to move through life. So a sub or a timeout, I don't think that was an accident.
So I think the way I would phrase it is if Cody Williams is going out there for a 7-minute stretch, Cody Williams is getting a 7-minute stretch. Yeah. Unless he does something.
Okay, I can see that.
Unless he does something egregious, like doesn't run back defensively, doesn't rotate, doesn't run the play, right? As long as he's executing the principles of what what Will wants as a head coach and is doing those things, then he gets his 7-minute stretch, regardless of the run. Mm-hmm. That if Kyle Filipowski goes out there against Jonas Valanciunas and is just being bullied, well, there's some real value to have him being bullied for 5 minutes. Like, see what it's like. I talked to Jonas Valanciunas before the game the other day. That's the largest man I've ever seen in my whole life. Kyle Filipowski looked like a third grader against a high school senior the other night. And Kyle Filipowski's 7 feet, 240 pounds. Yeah. That man is so huge. There's a real value to Kyle Filipowski, when he's just manhandled by Jonas Valanciunas and he's in May and he's doing an extra set, he's going to be like, okay, I got to do this set, right? He's going to remember that in the weight room in June. And so I think that in the sense of that, the whole season has always been far more important for player development than wins and losses and the 7 and 8 minute stretches that a player's designed to have are there. But at the same time, like when Isaiah Collier just literally couldn't make a shot earlier this year, there's a point where it just gets too egregious, right? And Cody Williams was really not good for a while. And like, you just stop playing for a while. Like you can't go so far, right? There's a limit to what you can do here. Once they're executing correctly and playing the game correctly and doing kind of what is being asked of them, then you can decide, okay, well, I'm not going to pull them just because it's a 12-0 run, because that's not the most important thing. Having them learn how to play through this 12-0 run is probably more important.
I get all that.
I don't mean to put it on you. Someone could have heard what you said, and basically, I don't think Will Hardy is sitting out there and consciously allowing a 12-0 or trying to allow an 18-0 run in some capacity, is what I'm saying.
And it should also be pointed out he didn't have 5 guys who play a lot of minutes, most of whom start. But 5 guys who play a lot of minutes were not available that night. So, I mean,
right.
He can't reach down and sub those 5 guys in because they're not dressed.
Right. Have there been nights where the run's going, you're like, in a regular season, maybe you make a change here or do something, and instead you're going to let these guys try to work through it? Yeah, sure. Because
Well, David just dropped. Well, we had to end it there anyway. All right, well, thank you, David, if you're out there in the universe somewhere. Jake, let's take a break. We got Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, coming up next. It's 97.5 The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Time to welcome Pablo Mastroeni back to the show, RSL head coach. Pablo, good morning.
Morning, DJ, PK. How we doing?
We're doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm just so grateful, DJ. So grateful.
For
life, man. For life.
Life, of course.
And another opportunity to get it done this weekend.
How hard is it when you're the head coach, when the fan base emotionally is going one way, and players, especially young players who might be a little more prone to ride an emotional wave, although any player can, to be the counterbalancing force that goes the other way all the time? When you have all the natural human emotions, you probably want to try to go with them. But, the whole not get too high, not to get too low thing, does that ever wear you out? Does that take a lot of energy?
I spend my whole life just trying to center myself, DJ, just knowing that it's going to be a roller coaster all year. And again, I'm as a leader of this group, like, I have to be the example of what the players look at when we lose a game that we should have won at midweek. And if I lose my top, then shame on me for thinking the players aren't going to do the same. So it's a constant battle to center myself, to make sure I take the emotion out of it and just think objectively. So again, I think for us it's all about process, and if you can stick to the process, there's a way through any difficult moment, and that tied with a good group of character young men. I feel really good about where we're at.
Post-game the other night, you talked about how there were chances there, and you've got to convert the chances. And I related a little bit as a baseball player. Your team is struggling to score runs, so you get guys on second and third with 1 or no out, and that guy who comes up at the bat, he better get that run in, because you need that, and you don't know when or if you're going to get another chance. But there's always that risk of, they realize the situation, right? Everybody's a smart guy out there. So in a baseball, you don't want the batter to be squeezing the bat and just gripping it too hard, because that's not going to allow you to succeed. In your sport, as I was listening to you talk about that, I'm wondering how much of it is wearing mentally, knowing we have got to convert, man. We've got a golden opportunity, and we don't know when we're going to get it again. So it's almost becoming a little mind game, and it might work against you psychologically. How do you handle all that?
Yeah, that's a great question, PK. I think the human thing to do when things aren't going right is to get anxious, right? Because you want it so bad. And what we talk about incessantly within the group is to be more disciplined and just do your job. Like, we don't need one player to feel the emotional burden to win the game for us. But we just need every single player to show up in the box, show up where they should be, and then the player that's putting the ball in dangerous areas to execute a pass. And if we can just stick to those principles, we'll be in a good way. I think it gets difficult when, you expect one player or two players to save you, and that's when it becomes an emotional roller coaster. So I think it's, the game the other night, there's a lot of good opportunities. We obviously didn't execute in that final third the way we'd like to, but looking at the tape, there was also moments where we didn't have our 10s getting inside the box. They wanted the ball on top of the 18 in order to create something to then score the goal. But if they would have just got into the box, the ball would have found them in areas where they should have been. So, again, I think we can solve these things by looking at it objectively as opposed to emotionally, and I feel that's the best way forward.
Obviously, a lot of the offseason and then the lack of goals here through the first 3 games, everybody's talking about a replacement for Chicho. That'll happen when it happens, and I can ask you, but then you'll just talk for a long time and not tell us anything, so I'm just going to skip right over that. And then we'll go to a guy I think it's underrated here that Anderson Julio coming off the bench and spot starting was so effective. And you try to get a guy from the Red Bulls, and he doesn't want to come, and okay, fine. So now you've moved him to Brazil. You announced that yesterday. I'm wondering if you have to go get 2 guys or if you have to go get 1 guy because maybe one of the young guys can do it. We haven't seen, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing his name right, Ariath Piol yet. And you've indicated he's close to healthy, if not this week, then next week. Can someone like that step into that role, or does the club have to go acquire a second striker?
Yeah, no, we're in the process of acquiring and looking for somebody that can almost mentor these younger players, right? Neither of these guys have a goal in MLS. They're in their nascent stages of, and so you always need a mentor for these young guys to show them what it looks like, to kind of guide them through difficult moments. These guys are learning the professional game, let alone soccer, at a rapid clip. And so I think there's a lot of, these 2 players in Ari and Forster are big-time prospects, and we feel that it's a matter of time before they break through. However, I think it would be naive to put on such high expectations to these 2 players. And so picking up another striker that has more experience, that has hit the back of the net quite a few times professionally, will be really important for their development. And then also looking at Ari as a player that could potentially play in the wide channels, in particular on the right, a little bit like Andres Gomez. And that's something that we haven't been able to look at because he's been injured. And it's been a lot of work on Forster these first 3 games, given that he's the only striker that we have available. So I think, in the short term, there's a bit of pain, just roster-wise and injury-wise. But I think this is going through these times early in the season. I think we'll fortify the group. We got to find a different way, a different mechanism. And for me, that's really about the mentality that the group brings. So, it's tough at the moment, but we'll get through it.
So it sounds like you're taking big picture approach, and although you're focused on the immediacy, you also understand this is a journey here. Just in this very season is a journey. So let's not go too crazy in the moment, and let's step back a little bit and let it develop. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, PK. Again, I completely understand. I think there was a lot of important players that left the club in the off season. We're off to a slow start in these first 3 games, and so I get the anxiety and the desire to want to win out these 3 games, continue in the Champions Cup. I completely understand. And then there's real life, which is we have 2 strikers, 2 of which are very little professional experience, and then one of them gets injured, and now we're left in 2 tournaments with 1 striker. And so, like, when you think about things objectively, you again, it takes the emotion out of it for me anyways. And And then reflecting upon those 3 games, the one thing I'd say is the consistent thing is we've created more opportunities on goal than our opponents have. And we haven't capitalized, which is a bad thing. But for me, the performance between the two 18-yard boxes is repetitive, and that gives us control of games, which we've had in every single game. And now we just need to execute, which a bit of quality up front or a bit of experience up front will definitely add to that. And the other part is being better defensively, because we're giving up few opportunities, but we're not capitalizing on good defensive plays in those moments, and it's costing us games. So I think there's a roadmap, and again, fans hate to hear this, but being patient, and it's not a real thing in a fan's life, but it is the only way forward for us.
Diego Luna is back, and I thought he was really aggressive in the one game he started at San Jose. He came in, and I think he had 3 shots in like 15 minutes right out of the game. He was clearly thinking, hey, I got to score. Everything you say about only having one striker and he's a young kid, I got to pick up the load here and that. And so I could see that mindset from him, be a leader, fill this role. I also wonder how much a mask sets him back. It's subconsciously, at least, I would think that's not good. And it's got to limit his peripheral vision at least a little bit. How big a deterrent is that? How long is he going to wear the mask? I know Moon Man, a lot of people made Moon Boy and then Moon Man references. Dunny's helped with that. And now there's Batman references with the mask. How long are we going to see Batman?
So I think obviously there's an adjustment. The beautiful thing about soccer is that you don't wear a helmet, and so you do have that peripheral vision. And as a creative player, it's really important to have that. He's found a way and adjusted to that mask, and that's a question for Luna, but he has never brought it up that, I can't see where I can't use my peripheral to make plays. So he's found a way to adjust that. And then what I've heard is that he'll be wearing it for the foreseeable future, and I think that's about 3 months. And the reason being is that when he broke his nose, that it exploded into like 16 different pieces. Yeah, and so it was a bad one where they just basically had to glue all the little pieces together and just keep it, stuff his nose with gauze and his sinuses with gauze for like 4 weeks to make sure it's set. So it makes sense that it's going to take some time, and they don't want to take any risks having the same kind of accident. So I think it's about 3 months.
All right, let me gather myself here before I move on. Kobe Henry, if he scores his first goal before April 26th, he can't even celebrate with champagne because he doesn't turn 21 until April 26th. How do you handle somebody? He's playing for you and all that, but he's so stinking young. I would think that the methods you use to coach him are different from somebody who's 10 years older and been around the world literally playing this game for many, many years.
That's a great question, PK, because what I've come to realize is this generation of players is a lot different than the way we were raised, and it's always you're constantly trying to find a method to reach them, right? Is it with honey? Is it with a stick? And most of these players in this generation, it's not with a stick. I'll tell you that. It's understanding and empathy. Ironically, the one player that you just brought up is a 20-year-old who has experienced third division football in France, and he left Orange County in the USL, went over there, and didn't have a lot of success. And I talk about this when we talk about development and how hardship is a necessary step in order to progress forward. And so this young man comes over to us in the preseason, and he behaves like somebody that's been playing football for years. In other words, like the experience that he had in France at a young age really opened his eyes to what it takes to make it in this game. And so he's come into our group. He sits with the coaches for probably 2 hours a week, And he's one of the few that literally cut his own clips. He's got a journal that he writes in, sits down with the attack, down with the shoots that Kobe has. When you have a good foundation to build from, but you're incessant in your desire to want to get better, I feel like all the forces that exist in the universe can't do anything but make this guy a top player at some point in his career because he's so committed to it. If he scores a goal, it'd be fantastic. If he doesn't score but defends really well, I'd be just as happy. But he's a great young man with a really bright future.
Pablo, there's a little background. I think you should explain this to our listeners. You broke up a couple times, so they missed a little bit of it. But he's sitting 2 hours a week with coaches, watching video with a notebook, taking notes so he can review them later. Just to let people who don't do what you do and don't, you've told me this. I've talked to you about moments in games and showing teams video, and you said, DJ, I have to be careful because 10 minutes of video will lose the group. 5 minutes will lose most of the group. And you have had players over the years who you thought might check out at 60 seconds of video. So 2 hours is like, this guy's off the charts versus what most players of his generation are willing to do. I can't believe a generation watches video games, won't watch video of themselves playing soccer, but nonetheless, that's what you deal with when you go in every day.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think, too, is because I think there's this weird, I don't know, mental, it's just this idea that because I made it to the pros, I made it. And it almost becomes a fixed mindset when you make it to the pros. Like there's a lot of growth mindset to get to the pros. But then when you get to the pros, it's almost like, well, I've made it. And you start resting upon your laurels. And so where Kobe is a true professional. And this is, and that's why it's rare. You know, this guy that carries around a journal and logs his state of mind, but also sits with the coaches and goes through every play. Just think about the amount of confidence that brings to a coach and a coaching staff when he's this committed to his craft. And so when we talk about moments in games, who do you think is going to be ready for the moment? Is it the guy that just thinks he's made it, and the guy that commits 2 hours of his own individual time along with the team video sessions that sits down and wants to go through all the permutations, tactics and what he should have done on this play and how he should have thought of this play a little bit different. And he's cutting his own video, so he's investing his own time, to cut his own video. And for me, this is an anomaly. The confidence that I have in this young man, just based upon his behavior, is through the roof. And so he's a young player. Don't want to put too much pressure on him, but I know he's destined for great things.
Pablo, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for joining us, and we'll watch you not tomorrow night, but tomorrow afternoon, 2:30, the kickoff for Seattle and RSL at America First Field. Thanks, Pablo.
Thanks, guys. Great catching up.
Yep. A rare matinee game to kick off the month of March, but given the weather this time of year, I like the early games.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no question about it. Should be fine.
Whatever the weather is, you get the best weather of the day at this point. So.
Yep.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Yeah, I think the rain comes in Monday or Tuesday or whatever, but
right.
good weather for tomorrow. So, all right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. The question of the morning, we've got two good ones going. One about the Utah Hockey Club rolling. How's that playoff train looking now? Getting the bandwagon, starting to get a little more crowded. And then also BYU at spring football and a big step forward for the quarterback. That is what the offensive coordinator wants. We'll get to all of that coming up. Stay with us.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
It's what you want.
You know, I was babysat until 8th grade. Dolores Arnold used to babysit me every day after school. And
Dolores?
Her husband, yeah.
Look, you got like 220-pound 8th grade hands.
Can we not focus on that?
You're like, hey, Dolores. Hi, Hans. I think it's funny the thought of a 8th grade Hans Olsen probably pushing 2 bills. He's sitting in and being babysat.
You guys let me know when you're done so I can finish my story.
Tell us more about Dolores.
Anyways, her husband, Don, liked MASH.
sitting next to Don on the couch watching MASH.
Hey, Don, can I borrow your shaver?
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. You know, we do win ticket Wednesdays. Every Wednesday we give away tickets to games, to concerts, to shows. Now, we've been doing Ticket Tuesdays. We had so many tickets on Thursday. We were giving away hockey tickets and RSL tickets. Now,
and RSL Thursday is a thing. Like
that's RSL Thursday. Will be a thing all season long. Their season just getting going. We just had Pablo Mastroeni on. If you missed it, you got to listen wherever you get your podcasts. He talks about what they need to do to score goals, adding strikers to the roster, young strikers, and a young 20-year-old defender who's played really well in his first couple of starts. So that's wherever you get your podcasts. The tickets that we've been giving away Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we now have so many tickets to give away that Yak has rebelled. There aren't enough phone lines for all the calls that Yak would have to answer to give away these tickets. You're going to need a keyword. I'm going to tell you what the keyword is in a second. Yak, what do they have to do to win these tickets rather than call you all day long?
So what this is, as you mentioned, kind of a new way to win tickets. So it's time to reveal what we're doing. A Utah Jazz contest bonus keyword. Giving away tons of tickets to Sunday's Jazz game against the New Orleans Pelicans. To win, go to KSLSports.com and look for the Win Jazz Tickets tile. When you're there, make sure you have this keyword to get 97. You heard that right, 97 extra entries to win. Almost 100. Obviously, 97.5. You get it. Are you ready for it? The keyword is, DJ?
Dunk.
Yep, D-U-N-K. Enter the keyword on the contest form. You'll get 97 extra entries. Enter now. Go to KSLSports.com and look for the Win Jazz Tickets tile, and hopefully you win today.
All right, there it is. Keyword dunk. All right, PK. It is not a slam dunk that the Utah Hockey Club will advance to the playoffs, but the possibility has been improving. The odds have been improving dramatically here over the last few games. They've won 3 in a row. They have won 6 out of 8. And as opposed to having that advantage in shots and in possession and feeling like they got control of the game, but having to score in the last 6 or 8 minutes to win 2-1, which they did a couple times, they took Minnesota apart. They scored on a couple power plays in the first period. It was 3-1 going to the third. You're thinking, okay, they've blown leads before, but that was then. This is now. The baby, we're watching the baby grow, as Bear said. And sure enough, they score 3 times in the third and blow Minnesota out at the end and win 6-1. The question of the morning up on our Facebook page, DJ and PK, and up on Twitter at David DJ James. The Clubs won 3 in a row, 4 out of 5, 6 out of 8. Are you on the playoff train? And PK, the answer overwhelming here is all aboard. People are up for this.
Yeah, I'm so confident. I put down a deposit for playoff tickets.
You did not.
I did too. You can call my financial advisor right now.
You're a financial advisor. You pulled money out of the old 401k? It's like, hey, we're not going to need that.
That's how confident I am. This team's going to get it done.
Bill Armstrong's going to be wrong?
What do you mean he's going to be wrong? He's not going to be wrong.
Well, he's
not
so
wrong or right.
He's so right. He's wrong. Well, I mean, he's right because he's putting the team together. And if they go to the playoffs, he's right. He's right. He's right. He's right. He's right. But he did say, slow your roll on playoffs. He wanted them to play competitive games at the end of the year, and clearly they're doing that. You can feel the urgency when you're at the game or watching it on TV. You can feel it. You can hear it in the post game interviews. The urgency is there. I mean, the guys have talked about, playing out the string in previous years, and it sucks, and they're not playing out the string. They are playing a game, then go to the locker room, check the phone, get the scores, see what happened. And last night, Calgary lost and Vancouver lost, and they picked up ground. This is way better. And they're going to learn from that whether they make it or not. And maybe
what's that have to do with Bill Armstrong?
Maybe they do skip a step. Well, he told us at the start of the year they weren't going to make it. Slow your roll on that.
Say they weren't going to make it. You show me where he said, I guarantee we will not be in the postseason in 2025.
He did not say that. He calmed the expectations.
He just put them in perspective is what he did.
Yes. Okay. If you want to go that way, yes. He put it in perspective. A young team, and it might still be a year away.
Perspective in October is not the same as March. It's the same thing with BYU football. It was all about the fan base, and because that's who Bill Armstrong's talking to when he speaks like that. He's talking to the fan base. BYU football, it was about getting to 6 or 7 wins. Well, once we got to November and they're 9-0, it's no longer about getting 6 or 7 wins. So what is truth in October does not mean it's truth in March. It's the same thing with Pablo talking about, hey, we're off to a slow start, but let's not go crazy here. Well, if they are still playing the slow start in August, well, then it's time to go crazy. And I'm going crazy right now.
The other thing that's happening here is they said everybody has injuries, but they had more injuries. Bear quoted a stat he'd been told that they'd had the 4th most missed games in the NHL, and that getting guys back would play a role in this stretch run, and it does seem like it's energized the team. I mean, you get the guy, and that helps your depth in a sport where you need it because you're going to go through, 3 pairs of defensemen and 3, sometimes 4 lines, depending on, how the game's going. That 4th line's going to get some time. So at the end, and with both goalies playing, you're talking about 20 guys. So adding the depth is critical, those guys. But there's a whole I always get this backwards. The whole is – I almost messed it up again. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. And they're feeling that right now. No matter how good they are, there's a little energy and momentum. There is a vibe, and you get to feel it and hear it in the 3rd period.
You can taste it, man. I went and had an ice cream cone just to celebrate the word ice. I was playing Vanilla Ice all last night.
Okay. It's free association time.
I was watching clips of George Gervin.
DJ PK, the Iceman cometh. When we come back, spring ball has started at BYU. And Kalani, I thought, had something interesting to say yesterday that this is going to impact, he's talking about his team, and we can take it more broadly to the Big 12, but this is going to impact the Mountain West, the Big Sky, everybody. It's, I dare say, we've seen it to a degree, but we're going to see it at unprecedented levels now. We will get to that next. Stay with us.